Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. That is Nate. I'm Josh. We are looking here at the Wednesday slate of games with play-a-props on the docket here for you guys in this video. We also have a best bets video up as we're bringing you each and every weekday this season. So like and subscribe to that page so you can continue to follow along with us. We also want to continue to push you to thelines.com, putting up all kinds of content. One more week of NFL football, and then we are fully geared in on this NBA and college hoop stuff. So continue to check out the site there. Use that prop finder tool as well to make sure that you're getting the best odds available to you from all of these books that are giving us these bets in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into your first NBA best bet. We're going right back, not best bet, play a prop, but we are kicking best play a props off the same way we kicked off best bets, which is a Dame Lillard conversation of sorts with the Blazers and the Bucks.
Yeah, it's the Blazers to cover, and the biggest reason I feel is Malcolm Brogdon running that offense and looking really good and getting a matchup directly on Damian Lillard, who is not a plus defender, and facing a Bucks defense that's been pretty bad in general, really bad on the road, and is still trying to find its footing under a new coaching regime here. Still the same personnel, so I don't really trust them to bring it as much as I trust Portland to come out with a spirited effort here on Dame's homecoming night. And I mean, regardless of who he's playing, like Brogdon isn't a guy who's going to get too high or low based on the situation. Like he's just going to go out there and give you the numbers. I mean, and he's been allowed to play since Portland came back from this road trip. And he's got 36 minutes a game in his last 6, and he's given you 21 points, along with 7 assists. I think I just want to take the points in this matchup, 16.5. It gets you minus 120 odds on most sites. Not great. I think you can tack on the PRA and go 27.5 PRA if that feels better. Because, I mean, at home, he's doing everything better. They've had 4 home games in January, 9 on the road where he's had just 19 PRA. But at home, 21.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. So cruising past this number. He played Milwaukee in Milwaukee in November, had a 36% usage rate and went 18, 8, and 12. So the last 3 prior to that in a starting role against Dame, averaged 20 a game, went right at him. The Bucks defense is most vulnerable, kind of in the mid-range and in the paint lately. I mean, especially lately because they're limiting 3-point attempts, right? They're forcing you inside the arc, forcing certain guys to take the shots that they feel are the correct shots. But I mean, Brogdon, that makes me feel more comfortable about Brogdon. Like he's exactly the type of guy where like you run him off the 3-point line, he's not thinking twice about going right down there in the paint. Where the Bucks are allowing the 5th most paint points on the road, they're the 4th worst transition defense, and they allow the 2nd highest percentage of their points off 2-point field goals. So Brogdon just being aggressive and scoring is what I'm looking at here.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to take anybody in this matchup, you keep kind of attacking Dame's weak defense. It's been bad. People have been making excuses for it, and it's bad. It just is, and it's a huge reason for why they are where they are, essentially, which is so funny because what are they, like 32-14? We're talking about them like everything's going wrong. But this is a total letdown spot for them. And like you said, revenge goes both ways, baby. So let's get that narrative in there. Let's go ahead and look back at that Pellies and Houston game. I think there's just some good value to find in there. And I'm taking an under with CJ McCollum there, who we've talked about in a positive light in the past. But this is not a good matchup for him. So he's gone under the rebounds and assists number in 7 of his last 10. He's gone under in 4 of his last 5. That's relevant, not because it's happened in whatever. It's relevant because there's a direct reason for it. It's Zion and Brandon Ingram both playing the majority of those games, and the 8 for both of them at least. And then in the last 5, Zion missed 1 of those games. That happens to be the only game that CJ McCollum went over this number for rebounds and assists was the one that Zion was in not playing for, because everything drops for him when Zion is in there, points and assists. Because it's point Zion, right? And CJ sort of plays point guard when it's not Zion's team. And then he plays a little bit more off ball when it is Zion's team, as we know. And Brandon Ingram also has essentially gone the same way. Like his assists and everything just skyrocket without Zion because Zion's so ball dominant, pass dominant, etc. So the with Zion in the last 5, he's only had 6 potential assists per game. That's why I really like the under on the assists at 4.5 for some decent money. He hasn't hit this number in those last 5 with Zion and the assists there. So yes, directly correlated. Like I said, the assists are the thing that definitely go down for him. And then the other thing is this is just where Houston really limits things. There's a couple of reasons. One, they foul you. We always got to look at that. Like Houston's going to foul you and put you at the line, and that's going to limit assists every time. That's actually a big reason they limit assists to the 4th fewest on the season is because of the fact that they give up so many free throws. Shout out Dylan Brooks. That's going to be what happens when you got Dylan Brooks on your team. And then, by the way, the shenanigans the other night from him were ridiculous. He literally punched LeBron in the face. I'm not sure what that man is doing right now. He's on one. But moving past that, they limit point guards to the 2nd fewest assists on the season. And the 12th fewest points per game as well. So like the shots might be there a little bit more for CJ McCollum than the assists will. That is how I generally target guys who are like CJ or point guards, or at least let's call them ball dominant guards who can score from the mid range and the 3. Like that's not how you score against this Houston team because of the fact that they put Dylan Brooks on you and then he just follows you all around the floor and hounds you like that. And that's who he'll be on in this game is CJ McCollum. So I just don't like that matchup for him. They are limiting teams to the 3rd fewest overall, like I said, for the assists at home, 23 per game that they're allowing versus 26 on the road. Both are very good numbers, but the 23 per game at home is very, very good. They have the 6th best defensive field goal percentage against 3s above the break. So Houston is, like I said, Dylan Brooks is out there owning that part of the floor as much as he can. I say owning, he's also fouling. So like you can still get yours, but you're not going to just get free shots from the top of the key, which is where CJ shoots all of his shots, 8 of them, 8 of his 3-point attempts this season per game from above the 3 when he takes them there. So 6.5 rather, but close. Either way, I don't like him to get the rebounds or assists without the potential assists and rebounds. Like he could trip and fall into some, and then we lose this bet. But I'm not going to assume that he's going to get him against a good rebounding team like Houston at home.
Yeah, this is a good call with some deep dive research from you. I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't see the potential rebounds in there though. I want to know how low it is.
They're high.
Sure
They're high. They're high,
high.
Nate. I left it out. I left it out on purpose because the rebound chances for him over the last 5 games have been the 3rd most on the team. 9 of them, but still only like 3.5 boards. So just putting that out there.
So yeah, he's not getting contested rebounds, and now you go into a game of a bruising Houston Rockets team that you're not going to have a dainty old veteran guard walk into easy rebounds. Like this isn't like some tank job young team that you're just going to like you said fall into some rebounds and the assists obviously did the legwork on that. So yeah, I think unless he suddenly gets 4 or 5 rebounds, like he's not getting over that number. So on board with that. My second pick here, Franz Wagner, 22.5 points and assists. It's only adding 3 assists to his 19.5 points prop, so I definitely think you want to add that. Against the Spurs here, his minutes limit is off, and even with a bit of a minutes limit to start, coming back from that ankle, he's averaging 17 points and 5 assists. The Spurs are a team that I do believe in their defensive resurgence in their last 3. I do not. If you look at even the last 8, including that 3, they're giving up 123.5 points per 100 possessions. They're giving up the 5th most points and assists to shooting guards. That's a total of 31 points and assists there. And on the season, they allow the 3rd most assists per game at home and the 5th highest effective field goal percentage. I like Franz more than Paolo in this matchup because you got to get stuff going towards the basket if you're Paolo necessarily. I mean, Franz can do that, but he can mix it up. I mean, and I think Wemby is starting to assert himself as a guy you don't want to go to the basket on. And maybe they stick him on Paolo at times, or maybe he's coming off in a help role. But in any case, like this Magic duo has proven that they can score. They just played a crazy high scoring game with Dallas where Franz had 27 points and assists. I think he just stays hot against a team that just really has bad wing defense. Like Wemby's really the only guy you worry about. And I just don't think he's going to be bothering Franz.
Makes sense that if you do think there is any sort of rim protection that's enhanced for San Antonio, that this is where you would lean. I do think it's about getting ahead of this number, jumping up a bit, right? Like maybe up to about 24.5, 25.5 or so. for Franz as he gets back into the lineup in his normal minutes, like you said. So that would be what we're doing here. I'm going to close it out. I've got a couple of strong leans, but my favorite one that I'm going to hit here is Fred VanVleet to go over. And this is very simple. I'm just getting ahead of the turnaround for Fred, who's had stretches of poor shooting like this. It's going to happen when like as good, he's good, he's slithery in terms of like dribbling past people, but obviously he's like all of like 5'9", so it's not like he has other weapons at his disposal when the shot isn't falling. So I think that's a big part of why you see Fred have these random points in the season throughout his career where he has these shooting slumps. So I'm going to go over because the points are down at 14.5. And they've been up as high as 18.5 in the last like 3 weeks before this slump really kicked in for him. So I'm just going to get ahead of it because this is a situation where he should have some opportunities against CJ McCollum and that very weak above the break defense for the New Orleans Pelicans. Talked about it a little bit in the best bets video because I do like Houston as home dogs in this one, strictly on principle. Like I think they're a better team at home than the Pellies are when they're on the road. In those situations, they have been, and they can hang with the Pellies. Like I would put their rosters up against each other, which is not something you might have said at the beginning of the season, especially with the way that Brandon Ingram and Zion are playing poorly together. But this bet is about Fred VanVleet and why we think this turnaround is going to start. He hasn't done well against this team either. In fact, this team helped kickstart this slump back on like December 23rd when these teams played, and he scored 10 points on that awful shooting of like 42-28 splits from the field and from three. But this is just where they're vulnerable. And he's not, I don't think he's going to stop taking the shots because the volume is there. So that's what I'm following is the volume of like 10 threes per game. It's been about 9 threes per game over the course of this stretch of shooting really poorly, but he's not stopping. He's not subsiding. He's basically a borderline, if not all-star level point guard, at least when he was in the East, in a way that like, he knows that he's responsible for getting shots up and that he is taking good shots. So I don't think that's going to dwindle. Like if he started to go on the slump and then started to dwindle it down to like 5 threes or maybe 4 or 6 because he's scared, then I would be like, okay, maybe he's like losing confidence here. But he can't even afford to lose confidence. He's the only guy that can really score from that part of the court. Jalen Green has proven that he cannot be your lead guard. If anything, he's an off-ball guard who you can play for like 27 minutes and feel comfortable with. I do not like Jalen Green's game these days, and I don't think he's improved at all. So I just think you have to rely on, and Ime is a guy who, as you well know as a Celtics fan, will not play you if he does not trust you, and he trusts Fred VanVleet. So Fred VanVleet's going to continue to get 33-ish minutes a game no matter what. The last thing I'll say is, some of these point guards who are not necessarily Fred, well, Kyrie's somewhat Fred VanVleet-ish in terms of size, but not really the same level of game. Either way, there are plenty of point guards in the last roughly week where New Orleans is hemorrhaging, just leaking, just all of the points to the point guards because Kyrie did them dirty for like 42 and 33 in back-to-back games. Shai did them up for like 31. Steph did them dirty. So yeah, everybody who wants to score from deep, Steph would be the more comparable guard for sure to FEV, and I do still think the archetype of player for slithery shooter is going to be able to get points against this Rockets team.
Against the Pels, yeah.
Pels, yeah.
I'm just baffled by how bad they've been defensively lately. I come back to it, and just we talked about that with the game, and you like the Rockets. I'm leaning the over here with people who are betting this up because Herb Jones is out. It's hard to imagine the Pels defense bouncing back in this spot on the road. They have been so inconsistent on the road. And Fred VanVleet, if you don't want to take the over for the total for the game, just take Fred. Like he's gonna hit some threes here in this matchup. He's gonna get into the lane, get some floaters, and be really the leader that the Rockets need.
Yep, 100%. So bring us home, Fred. Let's have a good night here on Wednesday in these player props, as that's all the time we have for you. Continue to follow along by subscribing to that page and checking out the best bets video that we also have up today as we do each and every weekday. And until we see you next, happy betting.